How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Pride of Villa. Now, once again, I make my return to the channel after a mere 5 months away. Look, simply put, you get busy with life. Sometimes you lose the motivation to do these videos. I've got work as well. That's also taken up a lot of my time, so I haven't had much of an opportunity to talk about Villa. However, I found myself with a bit of free time, and given the start of the season that we've all been there to witness, I thought I'd come in here, let's go back to basics, let's just have a simple discussion about Aston Villa so far. We're only 6 games in and already there's a lot to talk about regarding the club. So we're going to obviously talk about the head of operations, how the season's been going so far, and having a look at those transfer window recruitments. If you're going to enjoy this video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Like Nathan mentioned, we're going to kick this back into motion, we're going to bring back the Pride of Villa. So without further ado, let's get it started. As you can see, I am wearing one of the new Terrace Icons t-shirts that came out last week. It's a very nice shirt, very expensive by the way, very expensive. But if you like that quality very much, go find yourself to the Villa store in Birmingham. I do recommend that store because it's a lovely new addition to the Birmingham region. And you can go and check out more of these ranges as well, alongside some other cool stuff that is found in the club shop. So then let's go straight into probably the biggest piece of news for Aston Villa since the start of this season, and that is the head of operations. Now, earlier this week it was confirmed from the football club that Monchi, the head of sporting and essentially the head of football operations at the Aston Villa Football Club, would be stepping down from his position. He joined the club from Sevilla over 2 years ago now, so he's been with us since 2023. Obviously joining into the backroom staff with Unai Emery to really build a new project and vision going forward for Aston Villa. But after just 2 years, he's decided to call it a day and step down from the role. Now, it's a very interesting decision to have been made. Now, obviously, you can look at it, and we'll focus on it in a second, but when you look at it from the perspective of how the season's gone so far for Aston Villa, it really does feel like a spiralling effect. We start off with a pretty underwhelming conclusion to our season last year, where we did miss out on Champions League football with a pitiful result against Manchester United at Old Trafford. We then go into a transfer window that doesn't really meet the expectations that Villa were expecting. You know, okay, we may have finished in a Europa League position, but we're still, we're still a big club. We're still within, good consistency, good form at the moment. So we can still attract some decent players. However, given that it's not Champions League football, that calibre does come down. We saw that unfortunately with Marcus Rashford going to Barcelona, which, fair enough, the move would have been an audacious one for Villa to achieve, but given how the player did want to move to Barcelona for like the last year anyway, can't really blame him. Marco Asensio, a deal that we all thought was going to be a certainty, including a certain somebody. However, that deal never came through, and he ultimately went to Fenerbahce, which again is understandable. We then have a really disappointing transfer window. We sell some players like Jacob Ramsey to Newcastle. And then we're going into the start of the season, not particularly feeling motivated, but it's like, you know what? We'll give it a go. We've been great consistently, seeing a level of progression with the football over the last 2 years. We start off the season with 0 wins. We start off with 2 goals. We're already out of the League Cup. And there is a slight dimmer on the fact that now our head of operations and backroom staff are having a mix around. It's very, very worrying if you are just one of those casual football fans or a fan looking in from the outside, and you are just seeing a spiralling of events. And it's not ideal, but when we look at it as, Villa fans that follow it in and out, we're always looking at this certain news, which you are with your own clubs, obviously. So let's say if it's Manchester United, you'll have your thoughts on Ineos and the transfers you've made. If you're looking at it from a Liverpool perspective, the transfers that you've made, you'll have your feelings and thoughts. And it does seem to be a general mixed consensus amongst the Villa fan base. You got to think, from the players that have been signed under Monchi and Unai Emery, how many of them were Unai Emery's signings? Now you can look to points and say this player, this player, this player. There are certain ones that clearly stand out in my opinion. Pau Torres is almost a given. The likes of Yuri Tielemans look to be a given. I think players like Gesson are also kind of a given. They're players that fit that style and mode of Unai Emery's tactics. But then you've got to sit and look and say, are these really Unai Emery's players? Is this the players that we wanted? Or is this the recruitment of Monchi and the higher-ups? Because you've got to think, for as good monies or good transfer sense business as we've made in the likes of Yuri Tielemans, getting him on a free from Leicester City, you got to look at it and say, well, Amadou Onana, £50 million for a player that's barely featuring in games and hasn't perhaps had the impact that he made. Although John Duran did go off for a really bloody great fee for the club, did we really invest and make utilisation of that money properly? Not particularly. Pau Torres, for me personally, hasn't really lived up to the expectations and just physically isn't competing in the game. The big issue is we're still seeing, and again we'll talk about this when we come to the matches, but when most of our starting 11 still consisting of players from Steve Bruce, our time in the Championship in that season where we got promoted, Dean Smith, Steven Gerrard, when that is still the core and foundation of a team, that's where the problem is. And bear in mind as well, you know, we've got to talk about it, PSR, financial fair play, not being able to have that same spending freedom of all these mitigations as well. It's hampered who we could spend, it's hampered how much we could spend. And like I said, there's about so many other factors as well. The bigger one is the revenue to wages ratio. That was the main issue for Aston Villa. And that's where you can understand with the transfers that was made this year, or at least in this summer window, how we perhaps didn't feel the excitement of the club and the fans, but were looked at from a sensible perspective. You know, Marco Bizzo, a backup goalkeeper who's already, for me, shown a lot more calibre and quality than Robin Olsen's done the last 2-3 years he's been here. Gesson, it's still early days, there's the odd bit of flair of quality, but I think he needs a lot more time to set in and bed into the team. And then you look at our transfer deadline day signings, Victor Lindelof, which I could make a 10-minute video probably explain why I just don't think he's a good option at all, but hey-ho. Jadon Sancho, a prolific and high-profile winger that at least provides us with some depth out wide. And then Harvey Elliott as well, who, for a young player that's already experienced glory with Liverpool, it's a promising signing. But again, one that needs a bit of time. So there's kind of ups and downs you can look at it, but ultimately Monchi would step down from that position. And then we go into seeing, right, who's going to be that replacement, you know? Could we go for Dan Ashworth? Could we go and see maybe one of these other clubs and poach one of them? Or could we look at, and ultimately who would be our candidate, Roberto Olabi? Now, if you would remember 2 years ago, Roberto Olabi was the initial option for Unai Emery. He was the one that he wanted over Monchi, because of reports coming out that Monchi wasn't particularly the best of people to get on within the dressing room. He wasn't particularly, you know, easy or people person. So it's now interesting that 2 years on, we're going for Roberto Olabi. We've now successfully acquired him. And for me personally, he's a positive. You've got to look at the track record of Roberto Olabi at Real Sociedad. Alexander Isak, Mikel Merino, Martin Odegaard, developing those players from Real Sociedad that we now see as these high prolific players in the Premier League. You know, Alexander Isak, I believe, has gone for the Premier League's record fee. Mikel Merino is a regular feature for Arsenal. Odegaard is the captain for Arsenal Football Club. The track record is there for the player. And bear in mind, now that this is the the person that Unai Emery wants, you can start to sense and feel that that connection will finally bring together. Obviously, we're not going to see the fruits of it come true till January at the minimum. Or if not, we're going to have to wait another year. But at least now, in some respective, it's a bit more cohesion at the top of the team. It's now a bit of Unai Emery's got who he wants in his backroom staff. He's now got that upper management, what he can sit there and say, I need so and so player, and we've already got the recruitment behind it now. We've got that managing director who understands what Unai Emery wants. Again, they come from the same league. They live and speak the same bread and butter. They're going to know what is key to Villa's success. And it's also going to have to be reflected in the budget. It's also going to have to be reflected in PSR, what we do to meet complications and restrictions. But ultimately, for me, it's a positive step in the right move for Aston Villa. It's, like I said, it's more cohesion at the top. It's somebody that Unai Emery actually wants at the club. And you know, nothing against Monchi. He's worked best with what he's got in the limitations, but you can clearly see there, like I said, with the players that has been signed versus the success that we've seen from him, you know, the outcomes don't really match that, and it hasn't really been a successful one for Unai Emery and Monchi. So we wish Monchi well, whatever he decides to go and do. We look forward to Roberto Alabi, and we hopefully see a bit of the fruit comings when we look into the transfer windows for the next year to come. Let's talk about the season then. It hasn't been pretty, has it? It has been quite dire. It's like, again, there's about a million words you could say. There's a lot of the words that content creators in the Villa fan base have put out that perfectly summarise what Villa are going through. It's just not what you're expecting to see when you're a Villa fan. Coming off of what we've seen for the last 2 seasons, it's startling to believe, how do a club go from pushing PSG, and PSG coming out now saying that we were the team that pushed them the furthest, we were the best outfit that they experienced in the Champions League in that quarter-final match, to being a team that is, you know, 6-0. We haven't won a game this season. We're out of the Carabao Cup in the 3rd round against Brentford, and we're now going to games like Sunderland fearing the worst. This isn't Aston Villa. We've got player performances that look absolutely shocking across the pitch. We've got a lack of motivation and ideas coming from our tactics and style of play. It almost seems like Unai Emery's slow, methodical, possession-heavy based football is finally being turfed out by teams, and that's not what it should be. It needs to be fast-flowing football. It needs to be making use of our wide channels, because that's what we've got. We've spent this money on Daniel Marlon, who has not had a fair share and a fair crack at the team. Evan Gisson, he's somebody that would really benefit well from a bit of space. Jadon Sancho, Harvey Elliott, we've got Morgan Rogers that can play out there, but yet McGinn, even though he's not a wide player, by no means he's not a wide player, he's playing out wide. So you've got to sit there and think, why are we not making use of this? You've signed these players because you wouldn't sign these players without any sense of depth. You wouldn't sign, I don't know, you wouldn't sign more centre-halves and sell your wider players if you weren't going to play that style of football, if that wasn't your formation in mind. You know, we sign these players, they're the ones that need to be starting, and yet everything just looks so methodical. Morgan Rogers just doesn't have that same level of consistency and free flow in his game, almost like he's lacking confidence. Ollie Watkins, for as lack of as much of service as he's get, as per usual. How typical is this of Ollie Watkins though? And I really want this point to come across. How many times does Ollie Watkins start a season without a goal? You know, you want your strikers to be firing off the pace. Victor Gyökeres, for as, you know, shaky start as he's had with the Arsenal, he's already got 3 goals this season. Alexander Isak, he's just scored for Liverpool in the Carabao Cup game, but you know he's going to come good at some point. Manchester City are scoring goals. Liverpool are still scoring goals, even though some of their signings are a bit questionable. Chelsea are scoring goals. Tottenham are scoring goals and looking a more consistent outfit. It's worrying. It's very, very worrying. And like I said, I don't want to dwell too massively onto it, because obviously I'm just going to end up repeating what everybody else has said across this channel and across this Villa community. It needs to be better. It needs to be better. As of recording, we're less than 24 hours away from our first Europa League game against Bologna, which reportedly tickets are sold out. However, there are thousands still available for sale. We're coming up against the likes of Fulham. We're coming up. Yeah, tell you what, right? Let's get it up, shall we? Let's go and see what those next 5 games are. Because obviously we're looking at Bologna tomorrow night. We're looking at Fulham at home on Sunday, Feyenoord away, Burnley at home, and then Tottenham away. Now, I'm not being funny. Fulham are an inconsistent outfit at the moment. There should be 3 points there at home. Burnley as well. If we can't beat Burnley at home, then what are we going to be doing? Feyenoord away, that again is one of those games that we've played Feyenoord before, so we know the outfit that they are. And then Tottenham away will be a difficult challenge, but again, under pressure, we can deliver in those games. But my issue is we're going into it without the feeling of confidence. Everyone amongst the fan base is, are we going to score a goal? Are we going to win a game of football? Are we going to put in a more dominant and more exciting, outlandish style of football? Who knows in the minute, because that's all it ever feels like with Aston Villa. You just don't know where it's going. You don't know where the next win's coming from. And we're only 6 games into the start of the season, 5 games into the league. It's crazy stuff to say that, isn't it? It's crazy to believe that we're coming into these games and not feeling confident. Obviously, you're going to back them on the day, aren't you? Because you never know. But I remember that Sunderland game, and all week you've been saying there is no sense of confidence. We're going away from home. The stadium, it's always going to be packed with Sunderland fans because they're so passionate about their football club and being back in the Premier League as well. They're going to want to make a game of it. And for the most part, for 45 minutes, we were doing that. We were silencing them out. It's just we couldn't see it out, could we? And it's worrying. It's very worrying to see. The team, in terms of our signings, doesn't look anywhere near as much. You know, we needed a centre-half, which, fair enough, Victor Lindelof will do the job. He's injured. We're going into another season without a proper recognised backup striker to Ollie Watkins. There's so many issues all over the pitch that need addressing, and it's worrying. It's very worrying. Do I think Villa will be a chance of going down? No. In all seriousness, I don't think Villa are going to go down. I do think it is a bit of a blip, unfortunately, that we are experiencing now. But like with most teams, I think you just give it a bit of time, give it a few more games. I think we will find our feet. We're going to have to as well, because, you know, what always happens in these instances, I've said 3 years ago, when Dean Smith was on the verge of getting sacked, it would take 10 games to see what would happen to him, and then you'll find out what happens. And look what happened. He got sacked after 10 games. Now, I don't want to say the writing's on the wall for Unai Emery here, but overall, as a collective, everybody is at fault. The players are at fault. There is a lack of drive, there is a lack of motivation, there is a lack of motivation across the pitch, and there is a lack of cohesion against our players. We are not putting the fear into our opposition teams because we don't look like a team that's playing with confidence or wanting to put the fear in. Look at that goal we conceded against Sunderland. The lack of effort to even close down on track on that header, and ultimately throw away 3 points. It's ridiculous to watch. What are we going to do when we come up against the Manchester City and we come up against the Liverpool? How are we even going to compete in the Europa League? If we want to win trophies, how are you going to do it if you're not showing effort in these types of games? Makes no sense. Unai Emery, the style of play is ridiculously slow and boring. I can't seriously believe that he's wanting to tell our players to essentially get into the final third of the opposition's team, then pass the ball all the way around the back, just so we can dominate in possession and have a slow build-up play. It doesn't work. It's fast-paced football that's needed. Use your wide channels, make use your wide players. Matty Cash always likes to go and seam goals. Play him further forward if you want to. Make use of those running fullbacks. That's how you can maximise your team. Obviously, transfers haven't really helped it as well. I'm not saying Marco Bizzo is a bad signing. It's just not an exciting one, given that Emi Martinez for the whole window had been scheduled to go. Evan Gesson, really a sign that's come out of nowhere and hasn't massively set up the pitch alight. Not ideal, considering we were all expecting to get Marco Asensio back. No real midfield improvements. We're giving contracts to players that, in my personal opinion, need to be moved on. There was talks about Matty Cash getting a contract extension, which is beyond ridiculous, considering he's a player that needs to be moved on from the club. You know, it almost feels like a bit of a pity signing. If we're not going to sign these players that we want to on this transfer list, we're going to give them contract extensions, and that's not ideal. We need to be reinvesting and looking towards the future. We can't keep putting our faith into older players. For as good as they can be, they're not going to last forever. So it's a mess. It's an absolute mess at the moment, and we're still going to back them because that's what we do, because we're all a bunch of mental idiots who love the Villa. Right, I feel like I'm rambling on here now, so I'm going to call it a day there. If you have enjoyed this video, please do leave a like. I just thought I'd do a general discussion, get across my thoughts, because talking to your friends and family about this stuff is, you know, it's not as interesting. And, you know, I have a channel for a reason. We have a channel for this entire purpose. So let's get it out there. Let's spread some optimism, and let's see what we can do to reinvigorate us, because you never know. Just sharing your thoughts out there just makes us all connect a little bit better, doesn't it? But yes, if you have enjoyed the video, please do leave a like. Please do subscribe. We'll hopefully get this channel back on the move with some more reactions and more news updates. But until then, I've been Ben, up the Villa, with the pride of Villa. We'll see you later, boys.